Good morning, my dear student. How is your weekend? Yes, it is good. Pleased to meet you online. In the previous lesson, we looked at the present tense. Today, we are going to look at the past tense. What do you understand by the past tense? The past tense is a form of language used to refer to an event or occurrence that did happen, had happened, or existed at a point in time before now. For example, I ate yesterday. That means this tense talks about something that happened in the past, something that happened before now. Is it today that I ate food? No, I ate food. I ate food yesterday. Even if it is today I have eaten, it's not now that I'm eating. Therefore, this thing happened in the past. Let's look at the categories of the past tense. The past tense is divided into 4 categories. 1. Simple past tense. 2. Past continuous tense. 3. Past perfect tense. 4. Past perfect continuous tense. We shall be looking at them briefly. But before we look at them, I said we have 4 categories of tenses. 1. Simple past tense. 2. Past continuous tense. 3. Past perfect tense. 4. Past perfect continuous tense. Let's now look at each of them. 1. Simple past tense. The simple past tense talks about an action completed in the past. It talks about an action completed in the past. For example, I completed my work yesterday. I completed my work yesterday. Remember, we said this tense talks about an action that is just completed. Example, I completed my work yesterday. 2. I studied in London. I studied in London. This is a simple past. I studied in London. Where did I study? In London. I studied in London. I studied in London. Example 3. He told me to eat. He told me to eat. Example 3. He told me to eat. All these sentences that we have discussed fall under the simple past tense. Let's look at the formation of this tense. The formation is, remember, you must have a subject. Subject, the subject is there. Subject, verb plus ed, or verb formed in a different way. If you look at the examples that we have given, some verbs are formed with ed, and then there is one that is not formed with ed, which is told. So, the simple past tense uses them. Let's move to another tense, which is past continuous tense. This talks about an action taking place in the past. It talks about an action taking place in the past, as if the action is moving on now, as if the action is going on now. But this tense talks about an action taking place in the past. It tells us of an action that was going on in the past before another action began. It tells us of an action that was going on in the past before another action began. For example, the servants were cleaning the place when I arrived. The servants were cleaning the place when I arrived. The servants were doing something when I arrived. You see, if the sentence goes like this, the servants are cleaning. you will know that the action is going on now. But here, it is written the servants were cleaning the place. That means they were doing that thing before. They were doing it before. As in they did it before. And while they were doing it, I arrived. That is why we say the past continuous tense tells us of an action that was going on in the past before another action began. Example 2. Example 2. I was watching the television when my mother called me. That means at the time I was watching the television, that means my mother did not call me when I started, but while I was watching the television, my mother called me. That is why we say this tense talks about an ongoing action which is joined by another action. Note, the formation of the tense is subject plus was slash were plus verb plus ing. That means you have to have a subject. You have to use either was and then another verb that ends with ing. Past perfect tense. The past perfect tense tells us how an action was completed before another action began in the past. The formation of the tense is had plus past participle form of the verb. Now the difference between past continuous tense and past perfect tense is that in the past continuous tense, one action is going on in the past, then another one comes on board. But in the past perfect tense, an action is already complete before another one begins. Here, we have a completed action, then another one. That is what we say. It tells us how an action was completed before another action began in the past. I will say the formation of the tense is had plus past participle form of the verb. Let's look at some examples. 1. Mike had read the book when we called. Is it now that we called Mike? No. We called him in the past. But before we called him, he had read the book. So this action, Mike had read the book, was completed in the past. And then another action came on board, called. That is why we have Mike had read the book when we called him. Example 2. Amina had finished the food when we arrived. Amina had finished the food when we arrived. So you see, before we arrived, Amina had finished the food. This action was already complete before another action came on board. Example 3. Sadiq had eaten when we visited him. Sadiq had eaten when we visited him. Sadiq has eaten too is an action that is complete before another action. So that is what we are saying. The last but not the least is the past perfect continuous tense. These tells us have an action continued in the past. The formation of the tense is had been plus verb plus ing. You must put a noun. You must put a noun. Remember we say these tells us have an action continued in the past. Here an action moved on in the past as if something is moving on now, or an action is going on now. And we say the formation is had been plus verb plus ing. Don't forget to put your subject. Once you put your subject, you have subject plus had been plus verb plus ing. Examples. I had been eating. Remember, it is not I have been eating. If it's I have been eating, it is an action that is still going on. I have not stopped eating. But this I had been eating. You used to eat before. I had been eating. You used to eat before. And then example 2. She had been driving. She had been driving. That means she had been driving before. Remember, this tense is different from she has been driving. She has been driving falls under present perfect tense. Present perfect continuous tense. She has been driving falls under present perfect continuous tense. She has been driving falls under present perfect continuous tense. But she had been driving falls under past perfect continuous tense. Talking about an action that happened in the past. Example 3. They had been cooking. They had been cooking. They had been cooking is different from they have been cooking. They had been cooking started right from the past and it did not continue into the present. But they have been cooking. It's actually an action that started in the past, but it has continued into the present. And for that, it falls under the present perfect continuous tense. But they had been using, as used here, falls under the past perfect continuous tense. We have come to the end of the lesson. But before we go, you have to take your home fun. Construct 5 sentences for each of the following tenses. 1. Simple past tense. 2. Past continuous tense. 3. Past perfect tense. 4. Past perfect continuous tense. I said, question 1. Simple past tense. 2. Past continuous tense. 3. Past perfect tense. And 4. Past perfect continuous tense. Remember, the question is construct 5 sentences for each of the following tenses. And you can see they have been listed below. For that, we have come to the end of the lesson. Do have a wonderful weekend ahead. Bye.